This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. Moments of Clarity's mission is to educate and end the stigma on mental health through the inspirational stories of our exceptional guests. You can join in the show by calling Tiffany toll-free at 866-826-1340 or on Facebook and Twitter at MOC with Tiffany. Now, here's Tiffany Werner.
Hi, and thanks for listening. This is Moments of Clarity. I'm Tiffany Werner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about the impact of some severe relationships between empathetic people versus narcissism, and how to be aware of the signs, because a lot of times we get stuck in toxic relationships that we don't quite understand, and noticing the signs will help us be aware of what a safe and healthy relationship really can look like. Before I start the show, I want to say hi to Ed behind the glass. Hi, Ed.
Nice chilly Thursday.
Yeah, it's funny how the weather comes and goes around here. It's just never consistent. But yeah, it's nice and breezy, and love the cold air. We don't get that so much. It's nice to appreciate.
I appreciate this in June.
Yeah, good luck with that. So anyway, we're going to be discussing, and Ed, I'm sure I've seen TV shows with you on it, so you can chime in anytime with narcissism, empathetic people, and getting out of toxic relationships. So my guest today is a psychotherapist, an author, speaker, and founder of Fearless Love. And she specializes in intimacy and relationships, working with clients and relationships on love challenges, including courtship, communication tools, conflict resolution, narcissistic abuse, divorce, betrayal, and recovery. And she's authored a #1 release from Amazon, #1 bestseller. It was authored From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps for Breaking Free from Narcissists and Predators. And the book explores red flags, narcissistic and sexual abuse, and it explains how to survive and recover from the trauma. And she's a licensed mental health counselor in Florida and in New Jersey, and a certified relationship coach, and featured writer, expert, contributor on yourtango.com, and so many other things, eHarmony, Psych Central, so many things. And I want to welcome to Moments of Clarity, Gianni Adamo. Hi, Gianni.
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Great. And I'm looking forward to the show today. I know that there's so many people that really, really need this insight and to see the red flags on how to look for a healthy relationship versus a toxic one, and how to know when we're in a toxic relationship. And before we start, I know there's people probably listening that will want to ask questions. I want to welcome callers to call in 866-826-1340. 866-826-1340. You're welcome to call in anytime. You got 2 licensed counselors on the line here. We're welcome to answer any questions you might have, or feedback, or stories that you can share to relate. So, Gianni, I know that you have your story of how you got to where you are today, and why you're so passionate about educating on narcissism, and empathetic, and sexual predators, and so forth. And I'd like to know your history and what was your moment of clarity, so to speak, coming through that.
Stephanie, I want to actually start with by just thanking you for having me on your show. This is exciting. You. I'm happy to be on your show. I'm looking forward to this hour for us to just have a conversation around love and also abuse, and how to tell the difference, and how to come back to your real self again, because coming back to your real self takes a lot of time and effort after having been involved with a narcissist.
A lot of self-love missing, and self-worth and self-esteem gets damaged.
That's right. It all comes tumbling down for you when you've been involved with a narcissist. I would say that my journey started probably early on in my life, around age 11, because age 11, I'm very spiritual and I'm very intuitive. And I felt at that time that God had spoken to my heart, not audible, but just in my heart, that I had a calling. So I've always lived my life knowing that I've had a calling. At age 17, I ended up being raped in high school by a peer who I thought was a friend, but he obviously was not. So I, like a lot of the victims of sexual violence, we did not say anything at that time. Today, thank God, we were able to speak more openly about this. So I swallowed it, dealt with the trauma by just sticking all that traumatic stress into my education. I graduated high school, then went off to college, graduated college. I've always kind of been smart and intellectual, so I still was able to get, my A's and graduate with honors on both sides, from both the high school and college. And then early on, I got married and removed myself from the dating world as quickly as possible. Ended up in a marriage that, my husband at the time really did not want children, and we were not sexually compatible. He had a much lower sex drive than me, so then I was very frustrated sexually in the relationship. So between that, I ended up feeling a lot of depression in my marriage. I felt very trapped in my relationship because I loved him, he loved me, but we were just not jiving together. At that point,
it's hard being with somebody when you have different passions and different goals and different ways that you want to live. One person has to settle, one person has to compromise more than the other, and it does get frustrating, I'm sure.
It gets very frustrating. And also, having the desire to have children is very biologically driven. So this is like your body's kicking into full gear to want to be produced. I totally experienced it. I know it's real. And so if your partner is not responding to that and all of your cues and your, what you're putting out there to say, hey, like, can we keep this train moving, please? And if it's not moving, obviously I ended up dealing with bouts of depression in my late 20s and into my early 30s. So at that point in my life, once again, I felt spiritually led, that I needed to get back to school, change my whole focus on my career path, because at that time I was in corporate sales and the IT world. And I went back to school and got my counseling psychology degree and refocused my life on what now I understood was what my calling was going to be, which was this whole area of marriage, relationships, and how to help people when they're in so much pain, and yet all they want is to love and be loved and to have a healthy relationship, to grow together and love with their partner, and to have a family. Like, these are really good, wonderful things that most of us have really deep-seated right into our, into our cellular levels. And yet, for me, it wasn't working. And I realized, okay, so this is where God has, placed a calling for my life. And I went off to school. Eventually, went on and graduated. And my first client, I remember, I did an internship at a rehab center, and I actually was quite nervous. I did not know if I was going to be any good at counseling and if I was going to be able to help anybody. I had a lot of doubts, but I remember my first session with it was a young man. He was probably like 21 years old, and he was battling with alcoholism and some drug addictions. And in that one first session where I was just doing his psychosocial assessment, I connected immediately, and I realized, oh my God, I'm going to be able to help not only him, but this is the right path for me. This is truly my calling. So I've never looked back. Since then, obviously, I did file for divorce not long after my graduation because I recognized that the marriage, we were just incompatible. We were two different people wanting two different things. So that brings me then to South Florida, and I moved here upon my divorce, and I then a year later established Fearless Love, knowing that, again, my focus is to help people who are looking to create safe, intimate, loving relationships for life, not just for the moment. to really find their joy and happiness in a partnership and a union that will last, where they can, raise their children if they're young and having babies, and if they're older, so they can grow together and really just be, playmates. Because once you're older, like you're done with the children, so you got to come back and be playmates with one another and enjoy each other's company.
Right.
So
you have to be on the same path and the same have the same goals for that too.
So then once again, I am now in South Florida, and I was just divorced. I moved here 2 days. I got here 2 days after my divorce. It all coincided. Again, I felt it was a spiritual journey because I had set my date to move here, and then the divorce date came up to be in the same day I was leaving New Jersey to Florida. So I recognized, here I go again, another sign onto like that marriage needed to end, and I needed to start my life anew. I arrived here in the middle of the recession, so that's another added problem that I needed to face, starting over after being together with a man for 15 years. In marriage 15, I really had not dated a lot. I got married out of college. And so South Florida was my welcome to being single.
What a beautiful place to be single.
Yes, exactly. For the first time after so many years of being in a marriage and a relationship. And so when we get divorced, and this is something I definitely want to highlight for the listeners, when we get divorced, most people don't recognize this. The divorce makes us extremely vulnerable, and it's one of the most traumatic times of our lives. So if any of your listeners right now are tuned in and they're considering divorce and separation, just please know that this is a very vulnerable time of your life, and you should be talking to a therapist or a spiritual group or a divorce coach, somebody that can help you to navigate this transition, because we think we're going to be fine, it's going to be great, we'll move on, we'll start over. But we don't know how vulnerable we really are. And I was one of those people. I had no idea how vulnerable I was. In that vulnerability, I ended up being targeted by a sweet and charming sociopath who I found through a Christian singles event. So I figure, let me start going out. Let me find singles groups. Let me find events. Let me find people and friends. Because I needed friends, and I needed ultimately, I wanted to connect with someone that I can once again establish my life with and be in partnership with. And so this man ended up targeting me. At that time, I did not know much about narcissists or sociopaths. I did not know the psychology behind predators. I did not know any of that because, remember, I never told anybody about what happened to me in high school. I married the next best thing and ended up divorced almost, 15 years later or after 15 years. And so I was very naive. I was, very naivete and not knowing, how predators really act and how sweet they really are in the beginning and how charming they are in the beginning.
Right. Love bombing is a huge thing. Hold on one second, Gianni. It's time for our first break. And but I really want to get into what happened, because this is like where the story takes a turn where people can probably relate more to. And I want to touch on the fact that you were at a Christian single event or whatever. Sometimes just the word Christian makes everybody think, oh, everybody's good. And not everyone that attends those events are stable. But we're going to get to that in a second. Please stay tuned. We'll take our first break, and we'll be back with Moments of Clarity in just a moment.
You're listening to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner. We welcome your input at 866-826-1340. Tiffany will be right back after this.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Are you or your loved one suffering from addiction to drugs or alcohol? My name is Steven Sundquist, and I'm a recovered addict. You are not alone. My team of dedicated professionals at All In Solutions Counseling Center is waiting to help you. With our evidence-based services, you can rely on us to help you get your life back. As addicts, we create a lot of excuses as to why it's not the right time to go to treatment. But the reality is there is no such thing as the right time when your addiction is the one in control.